Here we go.
Got
Hey, I'm
it.
Dan Fradenburgh, and I'm going to let Greg introduce us.
Well, all right. Hey, I'm Greg Scully with Real Wealth Solutions. We got Dan Fradenburgh. This is our Yeah But series. So we take a topic, kind of throw it back and forth because I think it happens in conversation a lot. You're like, so and so and so and so. And then somebody that you're talking to will be, yeah, but what about this? So it's just bringing out our inner cynic, which is very close to the surface, I think, for both of us. So I think Dan brainstorm today's topic, which is networking like a sociopath.
Yeah, sociopath. Yeah, it's like a
Will
psychopath.
let Dan frame that in because I don't know what he means by that either.
Sure, sure. So a prime example of a sociopath, if you want to think of, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Jack Nicholson's character, it's
Great
basically,
movie. I love
yeah,
that movie.
right. It's a user of people like they're objects, like their objective features is like all they actually got going on, and that's not cool. It's not a good thing to do. Okay, but the reason why I call it networking like a sociopath, it's inspired by a new interview series that I'm doing for my own site, dandoesdeals.com, and it's a series of chance encounters where instead of most podcasts, how you might be complete strangers with the guest. I don't even hide that fact, and the format actually enables us. It ensures that we understand where each person is coming from, and most importantly, their motivation and the role that they'd have if they were to co-GP on an apartment deal or a commercial deal. So it basically feels like I'm grabbing these people and then, trying to narrow what is normally, a few hours of conversation to try and pinpoint where they are on level of sophistication and basically what they can contribute to an apartment deal. But
So it's speed dating for sponsors. Is that what you're trying to do, Dan? Or
well, it's not necessarily just sponsors, and one of the biggest things is I've got an extra a little bit of incentive. One thing that's nice is that it does document it, the conversation and the relationship for 506B purposes. So that's really handy. That like there's actual public proof. Here I am talking to this person, and this person is telling me what their motivation is for owning part of an apartment complex or commercial property, and what contributions they'd be willing or able to put in to its running or the cycle of buying it and flipping it or whatever it happens to be. So very quickly, I also end up learning their level of sophistication, and I'm not convinced I'm to the point where I want to reveal like some of the giveaways on that, but that's
I don't know
that,
what that means. I'm
that,
intrigued. What,
uh, well, it's like, well, there are certain answers. Like, so the motivations, so the five motivations, the first one is to preserve your purchasing power. The second one is because they're like me, which is I want to trade my labor for wealth instead of my labor for income, which is then taxed before I can invest it into some sort of wealth. So I'm trying to just skip a step there. The next one, which is probably the most common one, is wanting to fast track the retirement. And so I know when they're fast tracking their retirement, they want to have some sort of modesty in their goals. The next type is the type where there is no modesty in their goals. They have to be a billionaire. I say it's because they want to buy their hometown. But that's the fourth one, and then the last one is something that some sort of motivation outside of pure profit or wealth, income, that sort of thing. They have some sort of social cause, and so from there, just by answering that, I'll have a good idea of their level of sophistication. Because if anybody says that they're trying to protect their purchasing power from inflation, well, that means you're obviously dealing with a number where it's independent of your actual income.
right, you've
So
got something to protect. Maybe actually putting bread on the table is less of a concern.
Right, right, exactly. So that's why, you called it speed dating. I think that's pretty accurate, but it just had enough pluses. And the other thing too is that even just getting started in any level of relationship, professional relationship with a potential co-GPs, it's a really great interaction to see. It's like, okay, well, like for example, are they punctual? You know,
Right. Yeah.
and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, yeah, exactly. I mean,
but
I appreciate it from the point of view of cutting to the chase a little bit. It's a little bit different when you're just getting started and you're trying to figure out your role or even just how this business works or what asset class you want to be involved in or finding out what your market. So, I'm guessing to some extent, some of these people are a little further down the road that you're chance encountering with. So speeding up the process to, hey, do we have a chance to work together, or we're not a good fit, but here's somebody I know, or here's a resource that I have. Uh, I appreciate that. It's, lends to my personality a little bit. I'm more kind of cut to the chase given the opportunity.
right, right.
So, uh, you know, kudos to you for putting somebody in the hot seat and then just figuring it out, basically.
Well, that's the trick. Is it's multiple choice. So I give them the answers. I tell them what each of them mean, and so that gives them a moment to chew on. What sounds mostly like them. Like, and so that way it's not quite the same as just saying like, okay, well, tell me who you are and how you can help me. It's like that's terrifying. But at least, especially because we start with the motivation,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody knows their motivation and beginners don't know the full extent of what they'll be doing. But the other thing that I'm excited to do is make sure that there's a language for effectively communicating this stuff, okay, this content. So have a fast way to say what your motivation is, have a fast way to say the role that you're going to take as a co-GP or some sort of relationship like that. Because honestly, part of it's because of my education background and because I've been in a few different professions. And so I see a lot of smoke and mirrors done with just language and poor communication. And if I can eliminate that barrier, that means we just have more people who are there to work with, which helps all of us.
Yeah, it's a filtering process too, to some extent, for both sides. I mean, of
Mhm.
course, and every time you're having a conversation at any point, Dan might have just already made the decision that he's getting through this call and then moving on to something better.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So he shakes his head in affirmative
Yeah,
aggressively.
yeah, yeah. Actually, it's funny. I remember for a while when I was thinking of this, because I was thinking about doing this with any old entrepreneur and not just real estate people. And so that was before I came to my senses. But I was thinking about a show where I make use of the racing cockpit. That was a business expense, of course, because it's a content piece where if they're boring me, I'll just sit there and drive while I'm talking to them. But it's safe, unlike all the other shows you see where somebody's talking and driving at the same time. Even if I'm drinking, right? So if I'm like T-boning cops in the game, that's it. Basically shows that the interview is not going very well, and I'm not very satisfied
Yeah.
with your answers. But if I pull over the Lamborghini, actually probably I think it was a Pagani is the one is the car of
Wow.
choice.
I thought that was a fruit, but uh, I'll allow it.
Oh, right on. Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's a hypercar, but it's more of a piece of artwork than it is, really meant to, have a lot of people out there that drive them, a major
Mm-hmm.
brand sort of thing. So,
Is
but
that one of the motivations?
well, that was
The
one of the
sixth
motivations.
motivations. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, right. I want to make content where I'm
Well,
T-boning
how do you
cops.
take how do you take the chance encounters out of a video content and drop that into a networking event. I
Oh,
mean,
well,
just from your point of view of, hey, Dan,
right,
because I've been, in-person networking, you feel like somebody's just like doing the numbers game. They're meeting as many people as they can, and they're like at you
right.
for like 7 seconds, and if they don't hear the answer that they're looking for, oh, it was nice to meet you. We'll see you around. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the conference.
Right, like America's Got Talent or something
Yeah,
like
and you
that.
actually see them throw your business card away. As
Right,
they
right.
walk away, you pretty much know where
Lighting it
that
on
one's going.
fire. Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
It's beautiful.
They're rolling your business card
Yeah.
as they're
Oh,
talking to you. I mean, so
yeah,
sometimes, you do have that networking
right,
sociopath atmosphere, but,
right.
and, can you do it in such a way that it's productive instead of just
Yeah.
running the numbers?
Right, right, definitely. And one of the ways we can do that is we can start having the labels on our lanyards. So that's your
Oh,
conference
yeah.
idea, okay, like an extra ribbon with your motivations or the sides. And then the other thing that I've been thinking is I think remote first is inside Zoom. Let me see. So it should be up here. I think there should be like three dots if you're in Zoom on your own camera, and you
I'll
can
confirm you are
rename
correct.
yourself. Yeah, you can rename yourself. And so you can add little terms at the end of the name to say your motivation and the most likely roles, like your core competency and your motivation. So, like if you're looking for purchasing power preservation, maybe you can go PPP. You don't want to say 3P,
Yeah.
especially if you're in Taiwan, because that's shorthand for a threesome. So it
Okay.
has to be PPP, not 3P. And then, of course, time for wealth, you could do like T4W or TFW, something like that.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
I just renamed myself Greg Scully Syndicator. So, I mean, I dumbed it down a little bit
sure,
from
sure.
your motivations, but I really like that idea for some of these network meetings.
Right,
If
right.
it
Yeah.
was
I
like
mean,
you drop into a breakout room, you're like,
right,
Dan's a financier.
right,
He either is brokering debt or has a pile of cash himself, possibly, or something like that.
right, right. Or at least I can get my hands on it if I have enough
Yeah.
ammo. Anyways, but yeah. So you're saying that you're a syndicator on my die. That'd be a financier or a repositioner, like some combination or a type of the two. So maybe the die needs to be switched so we have a real well solution version of it as well. But I think that if you have that on your lanyard as little ribbons saying that you're a syndicator or you're the you're more on the operations side. I think operations you should be a little bit more specific. Like you should say operations dash maintenance, operations dash bookkeeping, operations dash marketing, whatever it is. Making sure that low vacancy and whatnot. Any of those sorts of things, I think you'd have to be a little bit more specific on. But that's my way to simplify the whole thing.
Well, yeah, and also it came to mind was like just the basic elevator pitch type stuff where, hey, Dan, yeah, I'm Greg. I'm syndicator and house flipper focusing on central and eastern Tennessee. My main focus is asset management and acquisitions and closing deals.
Mhm.
That's what I can bring to the party. That was a terrible elevator pitch, but putting your emphasis or your role or what you can contribute right into your introduction, you know,
Yep.
can hurt.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, it's especially because it also helps newbies know that okay, well, if you understand the five motivations and you understand the six roles, then you can effectively communicate with anybody involved, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
tough one, especially in. I'm not too shy to say that uh, some coaches are definitely telling their students to lie about their own personal financial situation when they're talking to owners Is that something that you think is too hot to comment on?
I think there are some liberties being taken with people's involvement relative to their actual involvement. The classic is X amount of dollars, AUM,
Mm-hmm.
assets under management or something. Um, I think the optics can be that you're saying that you own 100 million worth of assets, but you might own 4% of those actually. Or that you bought them with partners, or that you're actually an LP and you really have no decision making at all. So it can be a little disingenuous with the fake it till you make it stuff type things.
Mm-hmm.
But if asked and somebody comes out transparently what their actual position is, I guess maybe no harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense. And I guess if I'm going to put my finger on it with the different roles that I have, a repositioner, contractor, that's for capital expenditure, operations, so that's bookkeeping as well as marketing as well as maintenance, unclogged drains, whatever. You got your boots on the ground person, the local who can get there quickly. You got your financier who, well, it's supposed to be the bank, but it can also be anybody who they're not really providing any day-to-day services. They're only fronting the cash, and then the actual sponsor who has added responsibility because they already own a similar asset. So there's going to be a certain, implied, responsibility for the sponsor more than other repositioners. But if I'm talking about the lies, on repositioner, I'm conflating a couple different people because the actual repositioner has to have the ability to do some sort of underwriting on their own. They have to have some level of competency at that. Whereas somebody who's strictly just like booking appointments or something like that, that's what I call an acquisitions person. So that'd be closer to what I think you were describing. But yeah, I think just realizing that you've got all these different roles, and like the acquisition guy, telling them like they're the ones that I'm saying might have some tall tales, or something where it's like, okay, like, you're kind of throwing some numbers out there to buff up the reality. And the biggest
Yeah.
one would be borrowing the sponsor's number and saying basically my group has this many hundreds or thousands of units. And but as far as the ethics of it, which is very near and dear to my heart, the fact is the acquisitions guy, unless they're actually getting it under contract themselves and wholesaling it themselves, they can be upfront about the facts. Like, I'm not the paper guy. They can. I'd actually also say that operations. You could argue that the legal department or your lawyers might even be part of operations, just because you're dealing with different parts of the negotiation. You could say that
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover. I mean, there's a lot of bleed over between
right.
some of those categories.
Right. So maybe they need to be adjusted or something, but that's the
Yeah.
main thing. Is like I think that they might say that, and it's like, okay, it's not the worst lie I've heard. It's not great when you're on the receiving end of talking to somebody who's never done any deals at all, and yet is telling you, okay, their network has this many units and this much money, and they've got this amount of cash that needs to be deployed, and then before the end of the year, stuff like that. Those are the ones that I think are the biggest stretch of the truth, and they're still not like so bad that I'd say that they're really really bad lies, but it's still not great. Is that something you want to comment on?
No.
Well, I guess we're screwed then.
I mean, it's fine. I started with 0 units.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody starts at the same spot. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a tendency to emphasize what you think you're bringing to the table, even though there might not be a lot to it.
Mhm.
I mean, if you don't own units, you don't own units.
Mhm.
So that's not the end of the world, but uh, but if you're like super serious about education and are doing everything you can to learn the thing, then that's fine too. And it's not always like the units under management and how much they're worth. It's all very flashy, and I think people get motivated because they like, oh, I want to be there too. But I think it's a little overemphasized. There's a lot of people that are contractors and have construction experience, and I could give a rat's ass if they've ever closed a deal themselves. But I would love to talk to them because it's such an important role for some of the stuff that we try and do.
Mhm.
The labor and contracting. So there's plenty of roles to be filled, and sometimes some of that. High level numbers throwing around from a resume basis is a little distracting.
Right, right. So, and like what comes to mind from what you just said is that your construction guy might be better off as a boots on the ground guy in the deal because like maybe well at least that way you don't have the same conflict of interest that you usually have with a contractor anyway. But one of the things I wanted to mention about this too is when I'm looking for the level of sophistication, and I'm going off of the answers I get for the motivation and the role, I find the fuzzier they are, the less sophisticated they probably are. That's my big thing. It's like, oh well, I'm like a little bit of everything, and it's just like, nobody's a little bit of everything except for the well, I think the repositioner does have to understand all the sides much better than the other roles. I suppose the sponsor has to as well, but the sponsor was a repositioner as far as I'm concerned, and they have some acquisition duties that I'm sure that they have a team for. But does that spark anything? Uh,
Just that maybe if you're just getting started, you just haven't quite figured out where you fit yet, because there's plenty of people that you know are in Wyoming, but they're looking in markets in Florida. Maybe they should also be networking with people that are looking to invest in Wyoming, and it might be easier to fill the role of being local and boots on the ground. So until you kind of get a feel for what you can contribute, and that gets very deal specific too. So it's the a little bit of a chicken egg problem. It's a lot easier when you have money,
mhm.
because then you just find somebody with a deal that you like and vet them, and it gets a little bit easier when you actually have capital to deploy.
Mhm.
um, so some of the lack of sophistication might be just a lack of they haven't quite landed what their role is going to be yet. So
Mhm. Mhm. So I guess the only advice I
you're
would.
kind of like more of an everyman at that point until you're like, I gravitated towards underwriting and asset management, and that's
Right.
kind of where my focus is now. But for a while, you're just kind of doing everything.
Right, right. And so what comes to my mind though is I'm trying to think of what answers could somebody give that could actually be the wrong answer. Okay. And in other words, it's actually incorrect. I think the biggest one would be the contractor side. I think a lot of people would think that they're in for a contractor thing, even though they are comically unqualified. It's because I think basically unless you're already building like your experience building your patio from a kit,
Right. Yeah.
that does not qualify you at all. So that's one that I'd say like use with caution. Like if you've done a bunch
Yeah,
of
I
action.
agree. Especially when it comes down when contracts are involved and permitting and city inspections. I mean, when the scope gets to the level where you're beyond repairing things and are doing rehabs and they're doing, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. The fact that you know, remodeled your house with a HELOC is useful, but probably won't get you a whole lot of mileage.
Right, right, exactly. But I guess at the end of the day, it's just transparency, and
Yeah,
as you were saying, like if everybody starts at zero, one day you have to turn around and start telling people that you're a commercial real estate investor, even though you've never actually done any commercial real estate investing, and it's a very awkward position to be in, as you're starting that whole process. But once you've got that deal, well, I guess when would you say that that's actually covered? Like, do you think you'd say like a full cycle or take it to closing? When do you think's a good time to start saying
that what?
that you're a commercial real estate investor?
Oh, I mean, I would say once you committed to that you're going to go down this road, I think that's fine. I don't think it necessarily has to do with whether or not you've bought and closed or gone full cycle. I would tie it more to the mindset commitment type thing, like, because if you don't have some underlying level of confidence and motivation when you're like at the bottom rung of the ladder, it's going to be hard to stay motivated. So, give yourself credit for what you're trying to do, and then the resume will fill itself in as you go,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which can be difficult because I mean, I remember feeling very kind of disingenuous going, and you're like, yeah, I'm a real estate investor. Oh, how much do you own? And he goes, well, I've, two
Partnered with
single
some
family.
guys.
Yeah. And I've done
Yeah, right.
RV, which is fine. But I mean, that's also uh, a lot more than many people ever do, is even
Right.
just being LPs or owning a fourplex or something. And you combine those two together, it's even smaller percentage of what most people actually do. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, yeah, that'd be my answer, is give yourself credit when you've made the decision.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's easy to get some confirmation just by how people treat you, and like when they're bugging you. Are they bugging you in a context of real estate, or are they bugging you for football scores or
Yeah, and there's plenty of people, that I know that started a year and a half or 2 years ago and haven't gotten the first deal or something, but they're out there doing it. I certainly would not say that they're not investors at this point. They just haven't had the opportunity yet, to deploy basically.
Mhm.
So, there's also the people that will show up at a networking meeting and a couple of meetups and you'll never see them again. And that's fine too. Maybe they decided they're better off doing something else.
Mhm. Mhm. Maybe they thought real estate's a scam,
Yeah.
even though it's not. It can be messed up at times, that's for sure. And don't kid for yourself for a second. The government actually does make all the rules, but
Right. Well, I mean, you can drop this out if you want, but there's just something out of Chattanooga, a Ponzi type scheme just got revealed with the SEC investigating a guy that was raising money and using money from other investors to pay other investors. Full disclosure, he's under investigation, hasn't been found guilty of anything, but yeah, it
legend.
does happen.
Right.
And they're talking about, I believe it's certainly tens of millions of dollars, if not crossing over to $100 million mark,
Mhm.
that may be involved in this. So yeah, it does happen.
Right, right. Well, actually, so since you're a syndicator, let's talk about some of the ways that you could know that you're not in a Ponzi scheme. One of the first ways that I can think of is one of the syndication methods that I'm most familiar with is where you have an LLC that owns the actual property, and then everybody actually gets the number of shares in that LLC. So that way, it's just like anything else you own. It's in your name. It's not a blind fund where it's just like you stick money in one end
Right.
and then
Yeah.
somehow it comes out the other. And so like that's the most reassuring single thing for me in that method of syndication. But what are some things that you can say that distinguish it from a Ponzi scheme?
Well, yeah, you get the K1. I mean, you're actually getting disbursements. You have access to the LLC's financials and the data from the property, from rent roll, T12s, delinquency. The financials, assuming they haven't been cooked one way or the other, because we're talking about Ponzi schemes. So who knows what kind of measures people go through to cover their tracks, but
Mhm.
you should be able to tell from uh, the transparently shared documents related to the financial performance of this business that you are a shareholder in,
Mhm.
and get some sense of the performance from that. And does that match uh, what your disbursements are? And does that match the narrative that your sponsors are telling you?
Mhm. Mhm. That reminds me of speaking to a few different attorneys about why their some of their bad clients came to them too late. They got somebody else's PSA or something like that, and it was an enormous mistake. And every single time you should actually have your own lawyer. You shouldn't be taking documents from online, because you can totally be behind the eight ball. And the reason that I was really given, it's because every single deal actually is that different. There actually are that many individual negotiating points that are unique to that property. That's the biggest reason why it's a bad idea. Like, for example, who is really responsible for paving the parking lot? Something like that, as something like extremely specific about a particular property. That's what they were saying, is so important to have your own lawyer involved on every single deal. Is that something you can?
We absolutely do. I mean, we have a lawyer involved that they draft the purchase sale agreement. We
Mhm.
don't use things that are available to brokers off of, their National Association of Realtors, bullet or, template type contracts, because those shoot right down the middle. They're meant to satisfy a large audience. I have no problem with weighting a contract in my favor as much as possible. My assumption is that whoever we're looking to transact with is doing the same.
Mhm.
And if it's just a negotiation, it can take a while, and it got more demonstrated once we sold the property and saw a purchase sale agreement written through the lens of us selling versus our agreements written through the lens of us buying, and see the adjustments that our attorney makes to try and protect us uh, from those two distinct vantage points. So yeah, I mean, it's very specific
Right.
buildings in real time on very specific pieces of land that potentially have their own influences from whatever, title, environmental, what's on the property, what the property is made of, things that have happened. It's just, it's not that expensive. Just price it in. That's the
Right.
thing that gets me, is like, oh, well, I can save $3,000. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess you could,
By
but
exposing yourself to
I'm
like
not sure
hundreds
what
of
it's going to
thousands of
cost
dollars
you
in
to
risk.
unravel a problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So the reason why I mention the lawyer's opinion when it comes to these transactions is it I think that is very revealing as far as how to spot a Ponzi scheme or a scam, if the lawyers are that concerned about the specifics of that individual property, you should know exactly where the money is coming from in your investment. You should know it's like, okay, there's a building, if it suddenly starts making 80% more, then there's some explaining to go do, because like, well, did more units come online? Like you've got a fixed number of units and therefore a fixed number of residents. So, like you're not going to have that kind of tumultuous, increase out of nowhere. So I guess that's a good way to spot if there's some funny business going on, right?
Yeah, I guess potentially if you saw like an amazing amount of performance in a market that generally doesn't have that kind of performance. I mean, that's a tough one. I don't know. It's like vet your sponsors, see if there's any SEC complaints for previous activity that they might have done.
Mhm. Go to the county records to make sure that your LLC actually owns the property that they say, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could just get very muddy
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like
I
bang
think
for your buck.
mostly,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think they, tend to be pretty predatory in the sense that they're targeting an audience that might not be as prone to get into the details of it.
Mhm.
Selling promises instead of selling businesses. So, yeah, fortunately, it's an extremely rare event,
Mhm.
but it does happen.
Maybe for our swag, we can get T-shirts to say, "Where's the property?
Yeah, where's the property?
Where's
Yeah.
the property?" It's because it's what's on everybody's mind, right? So, all right, cool. So I think that's some pretty good stuff for this episode of Yeah, but.
I don't think we said it once in the whole thing. Like,
Yeah, but I want to leave.
I do too. Yeah, I
No, I
need to
had to
go
throw
for a
that in there
walk.
somewhere. I was going like, what do I put at the end of yeah, but right? So that was me thinking on my feet as far as how can I make a dad joke to sail us through to the ending. I was thinking about that last night as I want to make a hashtag for it. It's like basically saying the things I do for social media engagement. Just make that into an acronym or something and a hashtag just to explain to anybody when I make a joke where it's just like it's not even like tongue in cheek funny. It's just like awful and I know it. Then I can put a little get out of jail free card
Yeah, right.
hashtag to let
Hashtag
everybody.
content.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I did it for the engagement. That's what I'm thinking. I did it for
Right.
the
Yeah,
engagement. I'll figure out after this call what that acronym is because I hate making
that was a
acronyms.
lot of letters.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. All right. So we should mention that you should like and subscribe and
Yeah.
comment. And if you hate doing any of that stuff, then at least subscribe because all that does is make it so that YouTube will pay for all of this content instead of us. And we like that. And it only means that more of our videos will show up as your suggestions, but most people ignore the suggestions anyway when they're on YouTube. They're busy searching for something else. So it's really no skin off your back. So please
Yeah, or
subscribe.
make a suggestion for a future topic or something too.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested to see,
Right.
what other people like, yeah, what do you think about this?
But make sure it's not one of those, yeah, but.
Yeah. We've already
Yeah,
been dancing around how much we're willing to say about
but.
certain things.
All right, see you around.
All right, later.